Hi, it's Jerry Roberts back again with another edition of Newsmakers Journal of the Plague Year. It is Wednesday, August 26th, and we are talking about the Republican National Convention, such as it is. And we are joined once again by the LA Times national political writer, Mark Z. Barabak. How are you, brother? You were in Wisconsin.
I was, and thank you. I appreciate the second chance. I'll try and do better this time. I was in Wisconsin. I'm home. I'm in a safe, secure, undisclosed location back home in the Bay Area.
All right. Well, I thought it was a pretty good night for Trump. Actually, he set multiple records for multiple violations of the Hatch Act in a single event and performative Potemkin shamelessness. But actually, the First Lady, I thought, did a pretty good job with her speech, demonstrating a shred of humanity that has been rare. Let's go through your 5 takeaways from the night, and that's where you start, Melania Trump's moment. What'd you think of the speech?
You know, I thought I don't want this to sound like it's going to sound. I'm not denigrating the First Lady, but it wasn't Cicero. It wasn't the greatest oratory in the world, but I thought, like I said, I thought she brought something that we haven't seen a lot of this convention. I mean, she actually expressed sympathy for victims of COVID-19. She actually talked about, suggested there are legitimate racial reasons for grievance out there. The country does have a long and sad and sordid history of racism, which continues. Things that we haven't heard from any of the other speakers, to be honest. So
yeah, I thought that the tone was very different. It did go on. I have to say, I checked this. I fell asleep on a couch, and I checked this morning to see if she was still talking, but she wasn't. But then, that was just one of the many times when they sort of used government property, the People's House, as a prop there in the Rose Garden. Which, okay. Mrs. Obama did that a lot, but these walks down the colonnade and all that kind of stuff, I thought was a little over the line. But I don't think anybody cares outside of Washington.
Well, I think that it was less what was said. Although, again, to give the First Lady her due, she did present a divergent voice. Interestingly, at her husband's convention, it was less what was said than where they said it. Right, as you suggested, using the White House. I mean, sure. Look, there's gambling in Casablanca. There's politicking at the White House, but we've never seen anything remotely this overt. And then we have our Secretary of State, who, again, theoretically, we like to think that politics stops at the water's edge, right? Standing on a rooftop in Jerusalem on a taxpayer-paid mission to Israel to give a political speech. I mean, again, this is like, to use my own words, I mean, this is a president who doesn't just, shatter norms. He takes them and grinds them into fine powder.
Yeah, no, and that was your number 2 takeaway, shalom. Who knows if it has ever been done before, but it's apparently unprecedented for the Secretary of State. Of course, he was there as a private citizen for that moment. But, it was interesting because I can't remember who made this point, but it just seemed like, and obviously it triggered a new investigation and all these other things. It was a lot to put out there for not very much speech. I mean, it was 4 minutes. He's not a strong or a speech maker. He didn't present well. It seemed to have more to do with 2024 and trying to make sure he was still in the group of who's going to inherit the Trump party.
Well, this is a president who is very, very leery of anyone outside his immediate orbit and family members. So, I can't say this with certainty, but, I think that this was a case of finding people who you knew were going to be loyal, who were going to say what you wanted to say, not go off the reservation. I mean, look, this is his convention, just as the Democrats with Joe Biden. There's nothing unusual about that. You don't have Ted Cruz giving a speech refusing to endorse the president like he did for, then nominee 4 years ago. But it's about control. It's about comfort. It's about this hermetically sealed show of unity or whatever you're trying to get across. And President Trump has shown time and again that the people he really trusts are those who are closest to him, his family, and then the small other circle of reliable folks like Ben Carson, who's going to show up, the Housing and Urban Development Secretary. I think they still call it HUD. Mike Pompeo. I mean, what's interesting is, there's not a lot of showcasing of other voices. Usually 2020, usually conventions are a chance to sort of showcase the next generation of leaders. We saw Nikki Haley, who apparently asked for a speaking slot and is very much interested in running in 2024. Mike Pence, again, as the VP, of course, can have a spot. But what's really interesting is how many folks aren't there. Not just potential 2024s, but there's a lot of Republican Senate candidates, incumbents, who are in really, really tough, tight races around the country. And notably, the only one who's going to have a spot is Iowa's Joni Ernst, who's going to speak tonight.
Yeah, that is interesting. And I haven't seen Mitch McConnell. Did I miss him? Did I blink?
You did not miss Mitch McConnell. Kevin McCarthy, but there again, look, Mitch McConnell has been very transactional in his relationship with President Trump. I think that's pretty clear. Kevin McCarthy, on the other hand, my Kevin, as the president calls him, has been very, very loyal. And what we've seen is loyalty will buy you a spot in the Trump, if not the immediate family inner circle, it'll at least buy you a place within Trump's circle. And as we're seeing tonight and tomorrow, a place on the convention roster.
All right. So your number three takeaway, Trump Inc., as we saw Eric Trump and Tiffany Trump. Eric, of course, is pleading the Fifth Amendment in a case with the Attorney General in New York investigating Trump Organization. So I guess all his words come out there. And then Tiffany Trump, I thought, speaking of shamelessness, telling us how she could relate to people just getting out of college looking for a job. I'm sure her struggles are manifest. What'd you make of that?
Well, don't forget, we also heard on the first night from Donald Trump Jr., his girlfriend, the former First Lady of San Francisco, Kimberly Guilfoyle, who gave quite the speech. We're going to hear from Laura Trump, who is Eric Trump's wife. We're going to hear from Ivanka Trump, who is a White House advisor, and Jared Kushner, who is Ivanka Trump's husband and also another senior White House advisor. So, very much a Trump production. I had a bit of fun. I suggested that, the president is someone who's put his name on everything from bottled water to wine to neckties to steak. So why not the convention and put everyone front and center? And the only thing really you were missing was this commercial logo and 800 number to call to place your order.
Right. But and then, of course, the other interesting thing is that you have the infamous Pam Bondi from Florida indicting Hunter Biden, or indicting Joe Biden for a graft and advantaging his family in government, which seemed, again, it's just shameless. I thought.
Well, what was interesting, you didn't hear a lot of talk about Hunter Biden. I mean, they've hit on the themes and they're pretty clear. I mean, I think I described it this morning, basically boiling it as saying that, if you do not reelect President Trump, then America will become this ashen pit that will make the seventh circle of hell look like a day at the beach.
Very good. You got that exactly. I was going to read that next.
Thank you. I got that in there. But, the point is, obviously, they have focus group, they've researched, they found the points that they think they are going to work. And a lot of that is Joe Biden is a puppet of the left. America will become this hellscape if he's elected. Not a lot of talk about Hunter Biden and this scandal, quote. What's notable to me is it was almost a drive-by. Pam Bondi, as you said, the former Attorney General of Florida, came on, talked. It was sort of like, it was almost like in Fox News code. If you're not a regular watcher of Fox News, don't follow these things, it might not have meant a whole lot to you. So to me, what's interesting is the only mention of Hunter Biden was in this quick 3-minute drive-by that, again, might have gotten the base all excited, but you're just kind of tuning in. You would have been kind of like, huh, what?
Yeah, you tweeted about that last night, that you really needed the secret decoder ring to figure out what it was she was talking about. And what she was talking about was basically the Russian disinformation from Ukraine, for which the president was impeached, but whatever. Okay, number 4, Trump cares, which very, very interesting way they're pushing back, because the whole, the takeaway from the Democratic convention in one sense was, Joe Biden's really a nice fella.
Yes.
And he cares about people like you. But that's always an important polling question. Who cares about people like you? And obviously Biden is winning on that in the polls. So what did they do to try to humanize the president?
Well, Republicans have the advantage this time around. Traditionally the party in the White House goes second. So it gives you a chance to respond. I mean, I think one of the all-time great uses of that was in 1996 when Bob Dole talked about taking America back to a time kinder, gentler, et cetera, tease it right up for Bill Clinton, who runs on the re-election of building a bridge to the 21st century. This time we had a convention, like you said, very much Joe Biden, the empath, Joe Biden who cares, Joe Biden who can relate, compared to a president who many see as pretty self-absorbed. So given that you had the convention producing these moments designed to show that, hey, he's an empathetic guy too. Jim Jordan, the Ohio congressman, talked about, I believe it was a nephew killed in a car accident, and the president taking time to come and sit with the family and commiserate. Rand Paul, the Kentucky senator who ran against Trump and was a very fierce rival in 2016, talking about going to Dover to greet the families of fallen soldiers in Afghanistan. Steve Scalise, who was the leader in Congress on the Republican side, almost killed in this horrific shooting at a congressional softball game, talking to the president coming to the hospital with his wife. So the idea is that, yeah, Joe Biden is warm and fuzzy and cares, but so too does the president.
Yeah, yeah. And then of course you had the naturalization ceremony in the White House with which, you know, he was, as he is an advocate of the importance of immigration for our country. That one was, I thought, really hit the top of the meter for shamelessness. And it was interesting to me the way that they defended against, you know, the charge that they were violating the Hatch Act, because you had Marines opening the door for him, and the acting DHS head was there. You know, the president can't violate the Hatch Act, I guess, but all these other people clearly were. So what they said was, well, this took place earlier, and there was a video on the White House website, and we were just taking it off of that, so it was in the public domain, so we weren't really using it. I thought that was a masterful explanation.
Well, Mark Meadows, the former congressman from North Carolina, who's now the president's chief of staff, had some more to say about that this morning. He was at a forum hosted by Politico. And he said, and I'm paraphrasing here, that basically people are making too much of the Hatch Act. He said, Mark Meadows speaking, that basically this is about not coercing people into supporting a presidential candidate, not saying, you know, your job is on the line if you don't vote thus and so. That's his interpretation of the Hatch Act. So everything by his reading is copacetic, A, and B, he said, no one outside Washington really cares anyway.
Well, that may be the one true thing he said. And then the last of your 5 takeaways is watch what he does. And there's been this theme of promises made, promises kept. We've seen that our governor appearing in a brief cameo the first night of the convention saying exactly that. But I thought they've actually done a pretty good job of, you know, assembling different parts of his record and making the strongest possible case for what he has done.
Well, what to me, that's one of the more subtle, which is not a word one would associate with President Trump. He's not subtle, and that's a big part of his appeal. There are a lot of people, and I've spoke with him, I'm sure you have, who love the fact that the president is not politically correct, that he says what's on his mind, that he's a truth teller, and all these sorts of things. You know, and there are people who just, you know, hate Trump. I think I said last week, and, you know, he could walk across the Potomac and hand deliver a vaccine for COVID-19 and they'll still vote against him, right? But then there are those people who are sort of in between. And I've talked to a lot of them, including when I was in Wisconsin. You know, you hear them say, you know, I don't like that he tweets. I wish they'd take his phone away, et cetera, but I really like a lot of what he's done. So what you had was a sort of tacit recognition that the president is, shall we say, unconventional. People used words like he's tough and he's intense, and even Melania in her speech said something to the effect last night of how, you know, well, you always know where he stands. So the idea being now this is also a president with, you know, cellophane is thicker than his skin. So you're not gonna have anyone out there and say, hey, he's loud and he's obnoxious and he's all these things that you don't like. So they use those euphemisms, but the idea is to say, look, we get it. We understand you may be a little bit uncomfortable with the way he acts and what he says and the way he tweets sometimes, but you know what? He gets stuff done. And that is one of the more subtle, again, a word we don't often associate with the Trump presidency and the Trump White House, but it's a very subtle message saying to folks, you know, we get it. You might not like it, but look at the results.
Yeah. And it seems like a lot of the convention is aimed at white suburban women on both sides of the argument. You had the McCloskeys, the great couple from St. Louis the other day saying, you know, they're coming to take it away. The suburbs will be, I mean, literally they said it out loud, you know, the suburbs are going to be gone. But then you have, you know, there've been a lot of black men who have talked, a number of state elected officials, the fellow from Kentucky last night, the attorney general, the guy from Georgia the night before, Herschel Walker, Tim Scott gave a great speech actually on Monday night. And I wondered if, that's aimed less at, Black voters than it is aimed at reassuring
Sure.
white independents that, hey, he's not as racist as you think.
Right, right. Well, look, no one, I mean, look, there are certain people who put on sheets and are probably happy to admit they're racist, but no one wants to think of themselves as racist, and no one wants to support someone who they think is racist. So, right, this is sort of saying, hey, look, we have Black people who support us, we care. It's less, as you said, about bringing around, I mean, look, the African-American vote will probably go 90+% for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. The question is turnout there. So it's not like you're going to win over a huge segment of the Black population, but what you're going to do is assure people who may not be comfortable voting for someone who they see as racist or doing and saying racist things, assuring them that, hey, it's okay to vote for this person because they're okay. I mean, there is, though, and we didn't touch on this, there is a certain amount of whiplashing in the messaging. You have people saying, Joe Biden incarcerated all the, he wrote this draconian crime bill that put all these Black and brown people in jail, but he wants to defund the police and let Black and brown people run riot. And, Nikki Haley, without using the words Confederate flag, says, and I took down this symbol. And then you have Donald Trump Jr. coming on right after and talking about, we can't erase our history. So, you do have a certain zigging and zagging and whiplashing. And I think that's illustrative of the fact that the Trump campaign has really struggled to find purchase with any single message, right? We've had Sleepy Joe, Slow Joe, China Beholden Joe, Puppet Joe. If you have something that is working, you stick with it.
You
and you
pound
keep driving it. Exactly. And I think that's what we're seeing. I think that they're having trouble finding purchase, finding a single resonant theme that's really, really sticking. And so, you have the classic plate of spaghetti against the wall.
Yeah. And speaking of that, we talked before the convention about, one of the things they needed to accomplish was to turn the campaign from just a referendum on Trump and the 180,000 dead bodies in the corner and the, all the millions of people unemployed into a choice between him and Biden. But, there's been so much. I mean, Trump has been front and center the whole time. I mean, he keeps popping up like Zelig in all these different places. Everybody's delivering these pans to him. And it's almost like the bashing of Biden, as you said, with the Hunter Biden as a drive-by. It's sort of, Biden bashing light. Have they really done enough? And obviously there's 2 nights left to make it a choice, or is his constant appearance and that he's front and center just make it more of a referendum?
I think they've begun to make it more of a choice, in particular by bringing up this whole issue of urban unrest. I mean, there is a segment of the electorate, older, whiter, it should be said, that is very has been very unhappy with President Trump and his performance on the coronavirus, and there's signs that some of them are going back to President Trump, not in enormous numbers, but enough that, well, I should say not in a way that's affecting Joe Biden's overall lead. And I put lead in quotes because we're talking about polls and who really knows, but that's been offset by some Biden gains in millennials. But I think they've hit on something with this defunding the police, with some of this unrest, with the security stuff. We're not going to know for another 70 some days if it's working or not, but they have sort of begun to do some differentiation along those lines. But again, at the end of the day, it's really a 2-part decision. It is a referendum, but part of the referendum is, do I feel comfortable replacing Donald Trump with Joe Biden? And this week they started framing the choice, which is natural. Last week was all about Joe Biden, what he was going to do. It was natural. This week, to the extent people are watching, and we should, I'd like to bring that into the conversation because the ratings show that it's way down. So not drawing a huge audience, but to the extent people are tuning in, they are starting to frame that difference more than they have so far. That said, a week from now, we're back to where we were 2 weeks ago before the convention started.
Yeah, of course, the pushback on that is, everybody's watching it online. Everybody's getting the live stream, so on and so forth. I'm not sure we really know, but, you raised a good point. I mean, to a certain extent, it could be driven by events too. I mean, you have this terrible situation in Kenosha, Wisconsin, of all places, which is the as we talked about last week, the tipping point state. You know, you have a cop who shot a black guy in the back in front of his kids. It's a horrible thing. But now there's, 3-4 nights of protest. People were shot last night. And that, I think, plays for Trump. I don't think any of that is going to help Joe Biden. Do you think Biden should come out and make a very strong statement about this?
I'm not in a position. I'm not comfortable giving advice, to the candidates what they should or shouldn't
do.
Just
give advice to me about my analysis.
What I would, to your analysis, what I would really like to know. I mean, if there's one thing I could fast forward to November 3rd and find out, how many people out there are really still in a position where they can be swayed by daily events. I think there are people, again, who are so dug in on both sides that nothing's going to shake them. People are going to vote for Trump again if he shoots someone on Fifth Avenue, to use his words. They're going to vote against him if he cures COVID and cancer and lands a man on the Mars in the next week. They'll still vote against him. So, to me, the huge question out there is how many persuadable people, how many are there people who would be swayed by what's happening in Kenosha, or what happened to George Floyd, or what happened in Kentucky, or what's going to happen? I mean, look, we have 70-some days. What's going to happen in another city or another place or something else in October? That's the big question to me. How many people are movable at this point?
How do you think they've done on creating a counter narrative about the virus? You wrote, I think, in your piece yesterday about the first night that they've sort of constructed an alternative reality in which President Trump is actually the hero of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah. I think that's a lot tougher sell. I mean, it's very, very interesting. Again, we had sort of this, I hate to use a split screen cliche, but you had Melania, who I believe might have been the only person. I mean, I know that in the opening night's prayer, there was a mention of people who are suffering with COVID. It might have been the only extension of sympathy from anyone speaking.
The only thing I've heard.
Yeah, so you had that, but again, the president is trying to build up this counter narrative. But, it's like the old country song, are you going to believe me or your lying eyes, right? This is not a low information situation. This is not something where people are like, well, gee, I really don't know what the president has done or said about COVID. He has been out there day in, day out. People know about, bleach and all the various and sundry things that he has done and said. I think polls show that only like a third of Americans approve of what he has done so far. And again, so this is on COVID. So this is not a low information subject. So I think that's a really, really tough sell, trying to bring it around. And I know they showed clips of, Democrats, Nancy Pelosi, Andrew Cuomo, all downplaying the virus. But, what they didn't show you was all the quotes they made subsequent to that, realizing they were incorrect and modifying their language. And the president still downplaying it. Even had Larry Kudlow, one of his economic advisors, talking about COVID last night in the past tense, like, done.
Yeah, exactly. And that was interesting because Kudlow's much more of a Fox personality than he is an actual economist. But the polls show that that's still the one area where Trump leads Biden in the handling of the economy.
Right.
And they have made a case, he did it before, he'll do it again. Again, sort of rewriting history. Oh, we inherited a recession. Well, no, actually he didn't. But do you think that's been that's worked for him?
Well, that's as you said, his strongest suit is the economy, and the argument we've heard over and over, falsely, it must be said, they said he built the greatest economy in the history, and the built part we can argue about how responsible is the president for, but the fact is it's not the greatest economy in history. We've had times that have been better and more prosperous, but nevertheless, that is if you come down to the bottom line, what the president's argument for re-election is, it's this idea that I did it before, I can do it again. We had this amazing economy. It's almost like asking people to vote on where the country was in February of this year, as opposed to where we are right now. And who knows where we'll be in November, but they really want to make it, if it's a referendum, they want to make it a referendum on February 2020, not November 2020.
All right, I don't want to go all meta on you here, but ultimately, how much does any of this matter? I mean, you and I, we all upset. Oh, did you see the
I was going to say,
woman who wants to change the way we vote to households instead of one? Yeah. I mean, things move so quickly. We analyze these things to death, but 2 days from now, 2 weeks from now, how much is it going to matter?
Well, I want to thank those who've hung in for these 20 minutes or so, and let you know you have completely wasted your time because none of this matters. I mean, does it matter some? Sure. It's like chicken soup. Can't hurt, might help. But it's worth noting, Donald Trump had, by most estimations, a really, really bad 2016 convention, right? His campaign manager got in a fight with the home state governor who boycotted the convention. So that dominated day one. His wife, Melania, gave a speech that turned out had been plagiarized. He gave a speech that appealed to the base, if you will, but did absolutely nothing to reach out. So by most accounts, had a pretty rotten convention. And yes, we can talk about this, that, the other thing, the electoral college, the popular vote, blah, 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 blah. The bottom line is lousy convention. He's sitting in the White House. So, not to say it doesn't matter, but it's very easy to overstate how much it matters.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is, I think we sometimes underestimate the extent to which the whole thing is a way to set up ads that are going to run, endlessly on Facebook and social media and TV and everywhere else with these moments, capturing these sort of. So what's on tap for tonight?
Mike Pence, Joni Ernst, I mentioned the Iowa senator is on board. More Trumps. I can't remember which ones. I think Laura. Yeah. So more Trumps. Mike Pence's acceptance. Joni Ernst, and a few others, all building up, of course, to the president's big acceptance. Now, the president had said he is going to have a presence each night, and he has. You mentioned the naturalization ceremony. He was seen walking out to a round of applause in the Oval, in the Rose Garden.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about the pardon. That was another.
An online pardon. Yeah, so I imagine, more Trump. I mean, it's in keeping with the convention theme: Trump, 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 and more Trump.
Yeah. And the other thing is, never forget, he is a reality TV star, or was a reality TV star. And, I'm sure he's the executive producer of this whole thing, obviously. And so you have these sort of tropes of reality TV. Oh, the reveal, he pardoned the guy. And then, oh, look at this, so he's telling a story. He's telling his story in the best way he can. All right, brother. Yeah. Listen, thanks for taking the time. Stay safe. My pleasure. And we'll be in touch, I'm sure.
All righty.
All right. Sounds like you got 3 of your 5 takeaways written already for tonight. That's pretty good.
Not quite. I got to put them. I got to put a computer keyboard to pixel or whatever, however you describe it.
The rest is just typing, as someone famous.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly. After the latest, just typing. That's right.
All right. We'll see you. Stay safe.
All righty. Take care.